Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And as just stated, I'll be talking about 100 years of insulin and what insulin means to us physicians who've been managing type 1 as well as type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes. Um, before I go any further, um, to spice up the talk and talk about 100 years. So what does insulin mean to me as a physician? So I have this to say about insulin. So we physicians really want insulin to be there, and we celebrated the 100th year of insulin. But then, as much as I like insulin, I would like to see a cure for diabetes. And if we have it, maybe in the next few years, we'll have a cure for diabetes as well. But insulin is that magic wand by which we can actually straighten out the peaks and troughs of my patient, Miss Smiti, and give her a very healthy life where she can pursue all her dreams and goals. Insulin is also very important for us to save lives, add longevity, add years to those lives. So you heard the song, There Is No Dance Routine. 10 years back, I wrote this article in Indian Journal of Endocrinology Metabolism about genitourinary infections. That time SGLT2 inhibitors were not there. But when I recollect, when you manage patients in your wards, patients with emphysematous pyelonephritis, like this man here, 45-year-old man with impending renal abscess, or this man here with prostatic abscess in paraparesis with sugars running in 600s and 700s. The only weapon in your armamentarium is insulin, where you can control blood sugars. Similarly, this child who presented to me almost a decade back with severe diabetic ketoacidosis, unconscious, 700 blood sugars, severe acidosis, you need insulin. And very recently, on the 22nd of Feb, we had to operate upon this patient who was immunocompromised, mind you, uncontrolled diabetes, but we had to prepare the patient for surgery. So what helped us? It was insulin. So that is why we are here to celebrate 100 years of insulin. And as we all know that diabetes is preventable, even if somebody suffers from diabetes, you can make it go into remission. There are various definitions of remission, but then at least you can make sure that the patient, if treated initially by insulin, and for a few days, you bring down the glucotoxicity, lipotoxicity, the beta cell preservation is there, and they can be managed by just pioglitazone, metformin, DPP4 inhibitors, or SGLT2 inhibitors for life. So there also, this shows the importance of insulin. So as I stated, you save lives, and then you save limbs, eyes, and cardiovascular mortality comes down. So that is when there was a study to see 50 interventions and advancements that form the foundation of modern day life expectancy. And insulin was right there. And the number of lives saved was almost like 15 million, 1.5 crore lives, 1.5 lakh, 15 lakhs lives saved. So it is an excellent innovation which has actually helped us manage our patients. In 2012, Kenneth Polensky wrote this article in NEJM when it was 200 years of NEJM, and he started by saying that Banting and Best got their Nobel Prize for insulin. And practically in the whole paper, when you read, the only bright spot was insulin. And he just matter-of-factly stated that although severe insulin deficiency still occurs, it accounts for just 10% overall and can be readily treated with insulin. But then for those patients, it is a boon, isn't it? But at the same time, the rest of the article said that in these 200 years, from 1812 to 2012, diabetes has worsened. So how has that worsened? If you see the IDF statistics, 67 lakh patients died due to diabetes in the past 1 year, and the figure was 49 lakhs in 2019. So every year you are adding almost 20 lakh people dying due to diabetes. But then what has happened to the insulin? The insulins are becoming safer, longer acting, better, less hypoglycemia over time. But then there is a problem. And this problem I thought I must highlight. Something which has not kept pace with the innovation in insulin is its excess universally. When Banting and Best brought insulin to this world, Banting said that insulin does not belong to me, it belongs to the world. And they sold the patent to the university in Canada, to Toronto University, for $1. And then eventually it was taken up by Lilly and Novo Nordisk to produce. But what has happened now in 2022, almost 30 million people who require insulin do not get it. There is excess gaps, there is unaffordability, and even in the developed countries, people ration insulin. They do not take insulin as much they are prescribed just to make them work for longer duration of days, leads to uncontrolled diabetes and then complications. So basically, 1 out of 2 people who require insulin are not getting it. What happens to the cost of insulin? So the cost of insulin in the US has gone up 700 times. But at the same time, what has happened, imagine when insulin was taken from Canada to Copenhagen, it was a non-profit organization by Novo Nordisk. But now what has happened over these years, the combined sale of insulin of Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk and Sanofi in past 1 year was $16.6 billion. Basically, it is a molecule which was sold, the patent was sold for $1 just to make it accessible to the whole world. But now it is just inaccessible. What about biosimilars? So when biosimilars, especially the Mylan and the Biocon biosimilar was launched, the acting FDA commissioner was very, very upbeat about it and stated that this is momentous day for people who rely daily on insulin for the treatment of diabetes, as biosimilar and interchangeable biosimilar products have potential to greatly reduce the cost. So it is a very good thing. But then some people have reservations that probably they are not equipotent. But then I personally feel you should use them when people have constraints of cost. In India, there have been various bodies like the Endocrine Society, the API, the MCI. They've been planning and doing their bit to make it accessible. We have Jan Aushadhi clinics, government hospitals, the non-communicable clinics across India have free insulin given to the patients. But yes, as we were talking, sometimes you have premixes, you cannot put patients on MSII there, which is not, premixes twice daily is not the physiological way of giving insulin. And then this is a study done from Bangalore, and the lowest paid unskilled worker pays around 1.5 to 9.3 days of wages for a month's supply of diabetic medicine. So it is becoming out of the reach of all patients. But then again, I think I am blessed in India. It is still accessible. You have, again, as I stated, Jan Aushadhi clinics where the price of insulin and other tablets are very discounted. Now it is a huge problem, challenge which we are facing. This is the Krishna's Butterball. Some of you who've been to Mahabalipuram, you will see this. So how can you do this? One is improving availability. All nook and corner of India, as stated, 30 million people don't have access to insulin who require it. Second is enhancing affordability. Biosimilar insulins may be the answer. Addressing excess problems associated with devices and services. Not everybody can afford a device. Most of the patients are on insulin syringes, and sometimes they do it wrongly. They take 40 IU vial and 100 IU syringe, so you got to be careful. And then support research and development where less expensive insulins can be found. And then summary of insulin timeline is, now you've got insulins which are longer acting, the generation 2 basal insulins, then you'll have smart insulins, weekly insulins, oral, inhaled insulins. But my take on these insulin is that you have to have smart doctors and smart patients. I'm sure a smart doctor who has a smart patient can control blood sugar even on an NPH, whereas a not so smart patient and a not so smart doctor may not be able to control it with a Tauji or a Tresiba. So it is important. So what is that known as therapy by the ear? Diabetes therapy by the ear is education. And we have to do away with inertia, the clinical inertia of doctors putting patient on insulin and the patient not accepting insulin. Innovation is stem cell therapy, technologies. Dr. Pamela will be talking about new insulins, disease modifying therapies, and some interesting anecdotes. You remember this famous scene where Shashi Kapoor and Amitabh Bachchan are fighting their brothers? Similar fight broke out between the Best, the MacLeod and Banting after insulin discovery. And as this article states, by the end of this incredible journey, the team in Toronto was deeply fractured, conflict over the deserved scientific credit. They fought, but ultimately they decided to sell it for $1 to the University of Toronto. And then they shared their Nobel Prize with each other. And very interestingly, please pay attention, at a private dinner in 1922, Elliot Jocelyn, the one who founded the Jocelyn Clinic, shared news with the Nobel Prize winning Danish scientist August Krogh and his wife, who recently had been diagnosed with adult onset diabetes. Then the Kroghs, they stayed on and then they took insulin to Copenhagen for a non-profit organization, and then they set up what is known as the Novo Nordisk, which is definitely not non-for-profit. So next time, don't miss your dinners. You may have your aha and the eureka moment in one of those dinners. And then rest is history, $16 billion being earned by companies who are selling insulin. Excellent quotation by Elliot Jocelyn: unless the physician takes care, he will fall into schematic ways and forget that it is the patient who comes for treatment and not the diabetes. Each care unto himself. Again, as I stated, you need smart doctors and smart patients, and you have to individualize therapy. Thank you so much, and Jai Hind.